Hitchcocks? Nothing. Not even dreams.
He's after us in our dreams.
Dreams aren't real. You know, dreams can't hurt you.
They're just dreams.
Sweet dream. No bad dreams about Aunt Maggie.
But my dreams aren't like yours.
That's why they're called dreams. Dreams are not real.
She lives in my dreams.
Sweet dreams, my angel.
In my dreams, I love you.
From my dreams. So beautiful.
Howdy folks, welcome to another episode of Screen Dreams. I'm your host Cyrus Haley, and with me, as always, is my illustrious co-host, Daniel Ferguson. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
Good. So, we were unable to record an episode last week, so we thought we would do something a little bit special this week, which we might end up doing more of in the coming episodes. We are going to cover two films today. So the first half, we'll be talking about Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, and the second half, we'll be talking about Takashi Miike's Audition, and sort of comparing the two, basically. If you want to skip to Audition straight away, it is at 47 minutes in. So, without any further delay, here is a clip of Vertigo.
Madeline, what's the matter?
I should have phoned you, but I wanted to see you and be with you.
Well, why? What's happened?
I had the dream. Dream came back again.
No. It's gonna be all right. It'll be all right. Here, I'll get some brandy. Here, just drink this down. Yeah, just like medicine. It was a dream. You're awake. You're all right now.
And we're back. So, I'd actually seen this as a kid, probably quite young. I think my parents had a Hitchcock box set.
Okay.
So the first memory I have of Vertigo is actually really early, being freaked out by the woman falling off the church, and the also the optical effect of moving the camera forward and zooming out, or moving the camera backward and zooming in. The way he represents the vertigo visually freaked out my 5-6-year-old mind when I first saw that. Just the stairs or the street below extending down.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you saw it?
Yeah, I definitely wasn't that young. I was must have been my teenage years.
Right.
I'm only guessing, but maybe like 14 or 15. So much later than that. So yeah, I think you would have got a very different experience of it as from being a child.
Yeah, I never really grasped the plot of it. But actually, I think and I'm sure you would agree, what is far more interesting than the pretty straightforward, if not rather outlandish, plot of this guy framing or trying to, make it so that he could kill his wife, and that a trusted ex-cop would rule it as suicide. Yeah, is what's more interesting than that is what it's really about. And I think we might as well jump right in, although I would like to just couple notes on style and tone. Also, did you know when the cops, this opening scene on the roofs, when the cops are jumping over the roofs, did that make you think of Trinity in The Matrix?
No, didn't enter my head.
The way the cop jumps is almost identical and shot from profile as the cops in the opening scene of The Matrix, and I think that probably was an influence.
Yeah, it would hardly be surprising, really, because the thing is about Hitchcock's films is they did reach they reached wide audiences. So he did really well for perhaps what you were just referencing then was having a really sort of entertaining, absorbing surface plot. But then you also have a lot of stuff that you can dive into underneath the surface as well. So it kind of ticks all the boxes, doesn't it?
Yeah. I was thinking, obviously the score, because I watched this just about an hour ago, so the score is still in my head ringing. I guess it's a leitmotif of, anytime he sees Catalata Valdez, or whatever, whichever name you want to call her, Judy or whatever, this that string melody comes in.
Yeah, repeating itself. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just so nice. That coupled with shots of 50s San Francisco, it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
We were saying quite dreamlike, and just like kind of, because obviously the characters are caught up in a dream, and there's all sorts of dreams. I mean, he has bad dreams about it. He has bad dreams about the cop who dies. She has dreams about Cadalada's life, and he also has. It's like there's dreams within dreams, and the whole thing is rather dream-like. It's just such a weird film. It's such a weird film. 1958. It's pretty wild, exploring this kind of strange sexual fantasy stuff, just on the big screen.
That's pretty old, though, to be honest. That's not that's old ground being recovered. That's an old story being retold.
Yeah, but not quite in the. I mean, how viciously
I think
Jimmy Stewart is making her buy the new clothes, and
but that's the Greek myth of Pygmalion was like the sculptor who fell in love with the statue, and she came alive, and George Bernard Shaw actually adapted that into a play called Pygmalion, which eventually became My Fair Lady, the musical. They base that. So, and you've got a bit of Shakespeare Taming of the Shrew in there. Not exactly the same, I know, but this whole playing with the idea of idealism through the male gaze, especially. People creating their ideal woman is coming through very strongly in this film.
Definitely.
And that's old. That's like as old as stories began, really. I mean, it goes all the way back to Greek mythology. So,
but I don't know.
But it's been done through the it's been done very cinematically. In a very sort of masterful way. All it is it's been an old story being told in a new way at the time. Hitchcock making these big commercial American blockbusters that were reaching huge audiences. He had financial backing. He had everything, and that was basically sort of the cutting edge, era defining storytelling of the time, you would argue. So, but arguably telling us. I mean, the old stories are the best anyway, because they have that sort of grain of truth that sort of continues throughout. So the enduring stories. I mean, not necessarily the old stories, but the stories that endure and pass the test of time. So yeah, in a way it's cutting edge, but in a way it has its roots in classical stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, and I think it is definitely hitting on those themes of sort of remaking someone in sort of your fantasy of them. But what's weird is that it seems to be laying it on so thickly, because she is. I'm going to start off because I felt slightly strange, because is he in a relationship with the woman who's painting in his apartment? Or not, because obviously she is very keen on him, but I don't know if that it's made clear what they're.
I think
is he cheating on her?
The character is Mitch, called Mitch, isn't it? And she designs women's underwear, and I mean she is there as a character to resemble something that I think isn't the fantasy. The fact what he's preoccupied is the fantasy. That's what he's chasing. That's what he's like driving down the streets of San Francisco, this dreamy place, driving down all these roads, chasing this car. He's chasing this fantasy of this ideal. Well, you could say it's the fantasy of his ideal woman, but it's also in the film. It is a character who is completely invented for the to deceive him as well. So I think this other woman in his life represents, I guess, something closer to something that actually resembles reality, or not reality, because I think that that is a word that you can, yeah. When I say that in a loose way, reality,
right.
reality, because I think what this film is getting at, is that reality is basically fantasy and reality overlapping
Yes.
a lot.
Yes.
But this character in his life represents somebody who's very much in his mind, of his world that he. So I mean, they went to. I think they referenced that they went to school together, and they have all this history and all these
Yeah.
mutual acquaintances. That is like a world that he knows and understands as reality. Whereas this other person that he's pursuing is very much more otherworldly and mystical, and that's what he's much more interested in. He's more interested in the fantasy than the reality, and I think that character, one of the roles that character plays, is to make that juxtaposition pretty clear,
Right.
for people. I think.
Yeah, I agree that she's because also she wants him. You know what I mean? She wants him so badly, and she's so sweet and not mysterious at all, and wears her heart on her sleeve, sort of thing. And he's not. That's not very enticing to him. But I guess what I was getting at was, is he? I just didn't know if he was actively cheating on his wife or girlfriend with Mitch. I don't know if with Catalada, but I don't know whether or not they're in a relationship. Maybe it doesn't even really matter, because it's pretty clear how she feels about him, and I think he knows how she feels as well.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, it's not made clear in the film exactly what their relationship is, but I think they are just friends. Is how I interpret it. And then you have
okay. So let's say he's not cheating on his wife. He is, falling for his supposed friend's who he thinks is his friend's wife, and she is accessory to murder. That did kind of stick out a little bit to me as kind of just weird, because I was watching them. I was just obviously that's just part of the mechanism of the plot.
Yeah, that's the plot to drive the. I think that's the plot mechanism to drive the real narrative.
From watching it, it's easy. I'm looking at Jimmy and thinking, or Jack, or John as his name in the film, and thinking, dude, you're
Scotty is
Scotty, okay,
and then the other character is either Madeline, who she's supposedly pretending to be. Then it turns out her real name is Judith, and then it's Carlotta Valdez, who's like the sort of the ghostly figure who's apparently sort of possessing her.
I like Carlotta Valdez. That's my favorite name of the three. He's it's watching that whole section once he starts kind of getting obsessed with her when he meets her again. He's really off-putting. Like, he goes from being a character that you're really sympathetic with, and you're with him, you're on this journey, and then he kind of just, about an hour and 5, hour and 10 in, just is suddenly just possessed when he sees her again after she supposedly died. I don't know, it's just wild. And obviously all of this fantasy stuff with Jimmy, it's like that's been underneath the surface of this guy that you think is kind of a perfectly normal, nice guy for the first half of the film. Actually, given the right set of circumstances, becomes rather perverse.
Yeah, I mean, when he sees her in the street in the second part of the film, just because she resembles this other person, he starts to stalk her basically, and then like, yeah, fine. It turns out that it did happen to be the same person, but like that isn't the that is very questionable behavior in the first place to actually like follow somebody home and do that. And so yeah, I totally agree with you. The lines get very blurred in terms
Yeah.
of there's no
Yeah.
redeeming characters in the end in this film, really. Like everyone is just sort of broken and damaged, really, aren't they, by the end of it?
Yeah, by the events, the horrific events. Yeah, I think the first sort of hint of him maybe not being necessarily super kosher is when he pulls out his expired police badge at the hotel, and you're like, oh, hey, buddy, you can't. I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah.
That's a bit dodgy, and it's like that's where you start realizing, oh wait, maybe this is something else. This is a bit more important than just a little job where you're following a woman around. You've kind of something else has clicked there.
The hotel is really good scene because I felt like it echoed Psycho a little bit, and in terms of
interesting.
In terms of just the feel of the house. It was that old kind of style house. So aesthetically, it mirrored Psycho, but also it reminded me of Zizek in Pervert's Guide to Cinema, where he was talking about how possibly the different levels in the house in Psycho could be sort of different areas of the mind. So like,
oh yeah,
like the top floor is like the subconscious, and then in the basement is like the id, and what happens on these different levels is basically sort of mirroring what is going on psychologically, and and the different compartments of the mind. And I thought maybe the hotel had that kind of quality to it, just because he is essentially he is just chasing a fantasy, and
totally.
there are sort of situations in where fantasies work and they don't. And
I would say that's not even only just with the hotel. I would say that's kind of like almost the stables as well, because there's that moment, that amazing shot where they're kissing in the room, and then for a second there he's back at the stables with her, as the camera's rotating
I remember
around.
that. I thought I noticed that this time, and I thought that was interesting as well.
I think that's excellent, and that's definitely because I think the grave of Carlotta Valdez and the little church and the little the flower shop, the gallery with the picture of the woman holding the bouquet, all of these areas, they have this very weird dreamlike thing, and we keep returning to them in different contexts, and it's cool.
Well, I thought the second half of the film is really good because they're almost kind of an uncanniness or sort of a deja vu aspect starts to sort of take hold, where you come back to these places and you return to these places, but they don't have the same magic as before, which is basically what the character is experiencing. He's like retracing his steps, but yet somehow like that excitement of that pursuit of that fantasy is of discovering who this person is and learning more about them is totally gone, and therefore these places are they lose that sense of dreamlike quality in the second part of the film, don't they? And that's just masterful storytelling.
That's good stuff.
Like
isn't
it is good stuff because you're basically experiencing the same thing as the character, and you're going through the same thing at the same time, which is great storytelling. But to further extend on that, I think the actual choice of location of the city of San Francisco is very good for that reason as well. It's a very dreamy place. It has a dreamy quality. Very kind of spellbinding sequences of these car pursuits going through these winding hilly streets.
Those are my favorite bits for sure. for sure.
Yeah, they're strangely mesmerizing, aren't they?
It's just pure cinema. There's no, you've got the Bernard Herrmann score, and you've got no dialogue, and you just have him slowly following, and the sequence where she's in the flower shop and she goes around the back way, and he opens the door.
Yeah,
and
he's
it slowly
spying
wipes
at her.
across. Yeah,
Yeah.
that slow wipe across to reveal all those crazy, beautiful colors in the flower store. There's such nice, just shots, and they shot nice and wide with glorious vista vision, and it's spellbinding is the exact right word. But also there's in those scenes there's a voyeuristic thing that's going on, and it's like you said, we're completely with Jimmy Stewart there, because he's watching and we're watching him watch, and it's I think that's part of the hypnosis, and that's kind of what films are. And films are dreams, they're screen dreams, man.
We're at the same time as him, we are also constructing this fantasy. We are just as curious, and with each step, his discovery is also our discovery. Going back to the Mitch character again. So she's obviously a good friend of his. I wanted to just to go over the line because I found it interesting. She is driving to his house, and she sees Madeline leave the house, and she just makes the assumption that they've slept together or something, and she's sort of upset by it, and she says the line, "Was it a ghost? Was it fun?" As if in that short time, she's speaking to herself as well. There's nobody there. So it's not like she's in it's not like a piece of dialogue where she's saying it to somebody. She's saying it to herself in a car, which not many people do. And to say that line, "Was it a ghost? Was it fun?" I think is the real moment where the film sort of opens up quite a bit in terms of revealing what it's actually really interested in, which is the more the fantasy aspect rather than the actual story.
It definitely stuck out to me as well. That line, "Was it a ghost?" It's a good line, that.
Because he's, you could totally rewatch this film and take it on a totally metaphorical level. He's following her, wandering around down these winding streets. Eventually, rescues her and takes her back to his house, where he can nurture her, or the fantasy. What the film kind of indicates really is it was quite a futile endeavor to begin with, and maybe all fantasies are. They never quite live up to the excitement of when you're sort of in the middle of it, and you're feeling it. When they eventually reach their eventual conclusion, then it's fleeting and ultimately pretty unsatisfying. And I think obviously that kind of happens in this film as well. That's an understatement, really, to say that happens in this film. But
no, it ends very badly.
Yeah. Was it a ghost? Was it fun? Those were the two most memorable lines in that film for me. Watching it this time, it was very curious. But that was the time where her as a character was totally serving that other purpose rather than the actual story purpose.
Yeah, rather than the plot. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it was nothing. That those lines were just inviting you to go and step into that other sort of into the subtext of it all, and that was not to serve the plot whatsoever. Which which is interesting.
Yeah, it's just it's interesting how because obviously he's not. I mean, he's kissed her maybe twice, and he's completely fallen in love with her. And then in that next section, how he's just trying to get back to that, just back to it, and get just a taste of how it used to be. And, and he has, it's all like just fake, like aesthetic, like get the right dress, do her hair correctly. And maybe I'll feel a little smidgen of how it was before. It kind of gave me also sort of felt, I mean, it's, this the standard thing is the kind of male fantasy, the kind of him making her in his image, which he is, but there's also an element of they're both trying to reignite this spark that's just it's a fabrication in the first place.
They're trying to do it in two very different ways, though. He wants to go back, I think she wants to go forward. And they're kind of having a bit of a tug of war, aren't they?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
But
she's also she's writing the letter, then she rips the letter up. She goes, "Screw it, I have got the guts because I love him." And I guess she keeps changing. She every little step of the way she does it. She buys the shoes, she buys the dress, and it's so painful for her to do that.
Yeah, there's loads of visual cues in terms of what. Of somebody who is sort of creating a fantasy. So when in the first part of the film, when she was when he was being deceived and when he was coming to see her at the restaurant eating, you only saw her from the side on. And when you saw her leave the graveyard as well, they did the same profile shot, and I think they even did it again. So I think it even happened 3 times where he was looking at her from side on, which is basically like just a clear visual metaphor for some, like, not seeing the whole of somebody or only seeing them from like one side, not the whole side. And it was when she sort of recounts the whole the true version of events in her own head. When she's writing that letter, does she sort of actually turn and look into the camera? As if to sort of reveal her true self.
Yeah, wonderful point.
Bearing that in mind, I think he has very much fallen in love with his own creation. And I think the film is, there's enough evidence in the way that the film is done in order to suggest that, and that's why that's where that's where all the conflict comes from, because he's fallen in love with his own fantasy, his own creation, and he's obsessed with rendering its existence within the real world. And he can't, and it's not actually possible. It's an impossible task.
You know how Hitchcock was famously obsessed with blondes.
I've heard. I don't know the ins and outs, but I heard he became. Wasn't it Tippi Hedren on
The Birds
with the birds? Yeah, and he gave her. I mean, he like harassed her, didn't he?
Yeah,
basically.
I don't know the whole story. I do know that on The Birds that she was shooting that sequence in the attic for about 7 days, and they were throwing live birds at her, and she just basically lost her mind. But yeah, with Tippi and with other of his leading ladies, he's been known to have this obsession, and obviously he's casting them as these roles, these made-up fantasy roles that he's enamored with. And then slowly over the course of shooting, maybe they don't respond the way he would love them to, and maybe he starts. It becomes more and more clear that these women that he's casting in his films, so he can be around them and look at them, aren't as in line with his fantasies.
They're not living up to the fantasy of the in the celluloid world, the cinema world. How these people act and they behave on screen, which is obviously highly manipulated. They always fail to live up to the scrutiny of the real world, and I think what the point you were making about relationships is the longer a relationship goes on, the more you have to go. The longer you know somebody, the more you learn about them, and the less less able his fantasy is able to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
So you can't help but you can't have your own idealized view about anybody anymore because you know too much and you're not able to put your own stamp on things, let's say, as easily.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how life works. I mean, that's pretty sounds cynical, but I mean, it's how people are optimistic when they feel like they've got all that discovery ahead of them.
Yeah.
And I think they're at the lowest when they've sort of come to the end of something and they realize it wasn't quite what they thought it was. And our way of navigating through and processing reality is to create fantasies.
Yeah.
And that fill in all these gaps for us. It's more or less a survival mechanism. You could argue, you know.
Yeah, and it's weird because obviously films color those fantasies. I think that's why this show is called Screen Dreams. Actually, between sort of dream logic and film, and like our own lives being, we're seeing it from one angle, one lens, on one thing, and everybody like that line in Synecdoche, New York. Everybody's the protagonist of their own story, you know. But you've got your own little lens that you see it through, and there's you're kind of a voyeur on the world. But yeah, everything that all that stuff in your subconscious is colored by who you are and what art you consume.
Yeah,
that's what I think. Peeping Tom touches on this in a really great way as well. I'm such a fan of Peeping Tom. I like films that kind of, touch on that sort of dream thing. And this is one of the more beautiful and well-known ones. That sort of deals with dreams in terms of fantasies and living in fantasy, living in dreams. In dreams, I walk with you. You know.
Yeah. It does.
And another thing, the opening credits just being close-ups of eyes with red.
The closing.
You know.
You mean the opening credits? Yeah, the opening credits were funny. Yeah, and now you've just reminded me of it. I'd totally forgotten about it. Yeah, it is just like close-up of some. Of the eyes, but I don't think it's. I'm guessing it must be Carlotta Valdez, this sort of fictional made up character. Well, she's not fictional actually; she's a real life person, but she sort of reemerges as this sort of fictional.
How brilliant!
Sort of ghost.
How brilliant, and dare I say, Twin Peaksian, is the sequence in the forest with the sequoias in the redwood forest, and where she's got her black gloved hand up against the tree trunk, and she goes, between here and here, you know, I was born here and I died here, and it was just merely a moment for you, this big old tree. I love that.
Yeah, Lynch is obviously influenced by Hitchcock. I think
big time.
Blue Velvet shows a big Hitchcock influence.
Yeah.
But I even saw a video of Lynch talking about his famous filmmakers, and they have him in a cinema watching Vertigo, and he's actually watching the scene in the gallery. So he's watching a screen of somebody watching somebody looking at a painting.
Fantastic. Perfect.
I know. So, and we are watching him watching.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Lynch loves the dream world.
I think what you were saying earlier about the dreams and it's all existing in a dream world, I think the location of San Francisco is huge in terms of creating that feeling as well. When you say postcard imagery and things like that, it's like littered with this postcard imagery, and that is, you know, a postcard is like the idealism of the place, isn't it? That's what you normally find on a postcard. It is.
Yeah. Selling you on a fantasy.
Yeah. So that just all really helped, didn't it? In terms of
Yeah.
taking you there on that same journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is a feature in a few of his films.
Mm.
Yeah, it is almost like the tourism board funded the film, and it's like idealistic, makes you want to go and visit that place. And it suits what the film is about pretty perfectly in terms of
Yeah.
location and all these places. There's a lot of passing through places, isn't there?
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
how many churches do they go into overall? So many churches going through all these. It always feels like she's at one end of the church and then he's at the other one, and he's like following her a lot, and it's like elusive person, a very elusive person. Yeah, to me, it's very clear. It's like you've got the surface plot, and then you've got the subtext, which is how people make fantasies and how that all works, and how people end up mostly being quite a little bit disappointed at the end of it all. As it never quite. It's like once you're too aware, it doesn't work anymore, and the spell wears off.
Yeah, the magic's gone, the thriller's gone.
Yeah, and
So you're overall you're a fan of Vertigo.
yeah, I do. I like it. For 1958, it's very impressive.
Yeah, come on now. You know,
For 1958, it's really impressive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you can still watch it now and thoroughly enjoy it. And the fact that Hitchcock did reach those wide audiences and introduce these ideas in a very mainstream sort of fashion is also impressive as well.
Yeah. Yeah, super
He keeps
impressive.
it pretty simple and nip and tuck.
Yeah.
He's very, very masterful in terms of how easy he makes his films to watch, and how he is very, very direct in his storytelling. But he wants to seduce you every second of the way as well. He wants to make beautiful pictures that you want to look at. He doesn't want you to be confused, or he doesn't necessarily sort of bewildered or challenged or in any way. He just wants to just whisk you away and just take you on a story and be in complete control, and he very much still has that. Those films very much still have that power all these years on. They still have that same effect because it is quite timeless in the way that they are done.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's that big screen magic. I think the Bernard Herrmann score really pushes it over and makes it, in just perfect. It's great.
But the score is doing everything it needs to on cue though as well. It's you go into the church, it plays organ music. The everywhere the environments that the characters are in, the music is just sort of adding to the atmosphere of the place, basically. And when they are in these sort of like intense emotional exchanges, deep within their own fantasies it's really within his fantasy, isn't it? Then you have those like that intense string melody that just keeps repeating itself over and over again, but that's where you get that coming in.
Do you think there's any significance to the green neon light? Because that's a very deliberate choice.
Yeah.
Having that sort of watershed sequence be bathed in green light. Now, green is not a very romantic color. On Plutchik's Wheel of Emotion, green tends to represent greed, but obviously it's not. It's not like mathematics. It's not a one-to-one thing. But I just think that, especially once she comes out and she's finally accepted to do her hair exactly like he wants.
Yeah, she's kind of walking out that this sort of greeny mist, isn't she?
Yeah,
I kind of interpreted that as that kind of mistiness of she was sort of walking out of this sort of state of ambiguity and walking closer towards the camera into focus and becoming sort of the coming into sort of sharp focus, and the dreamers, talking about that rendering of existence in the real world. That's very much that walking from the back of the room, walking forwards, is that kind of process sort of happening where this person that isn't real again is sort of seemingly becoming real. So
Yeah.
just green
Yeah.
is just like that green was just like that sort of ambiguous haze, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he gets the flashing when he's dreaming. There's the flashing, and it flashes blue, and then it flashes red, and it flashes purple, and it
Yeah.
flashes and it flashes. But I don't think it does much green.
I just think green is maybe it's the ambiguity of green which is important. So the fact that you don't know what to make of it is what perhaps maybe what is significant. I don't know, just a suggestion. But I find with Hitchcock, although there is interesting layers going on underneath, a lot of his creative choices are very straightforward and simple. But
I don't think he's
effective.
as straightforward as a lot of other filmmakers at the time.
No, maybe not at the time, but he was.
You think looking back on it now, it does it?
Maybe looking back, maybe it is a bit more because we've there's been a lot since then, and we've seen a lot since then, and so it maybe seems a bit more straightforward now than perhaps it did at the time. But no, I mean, like, big empty rooms are there to represent loneliness. All these sort of visual cues are obvious, but it doesn't matter that they're obvious because it's nicely done and it's effective and it's clearly communicated, and that's exactly the point. That was his whole philosophy, wasn't it? He didn't want to like bewilder anybody. He just wanted to communicate
true.
clearly to the audience exactly what was going on, and
He does it well. He does it very well.
yeah, I do really like that the big empty shot with the courtroom scene when he goes. It just goes the camera from showing the characters, in conversation at that range, then all of a sudden just jumps right to the back of the room to see the big empty room.
Yeah,
And it's just because just want to just like double underline how the characters are feeling at this point. Big empty room equals loneliness. It's not like, but
that's not rocket science, but it's nice that he's bringing that kind of discipline into the mainstream.
Well, I think that's why he was so successful and is important to cinema, because he did bring that extra sophistication to mainstream cinema, didn't he? He did.
Yeah.
He did just take things up a little notch in terms of storytelling craft, and this is a much more interesting story. It was than a lot of the films that were being made at the time. You can still put it on as we've done this afternoon and watch it, and I did really enjoy it.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Hitchcock will always remain classic cinema because he was one of the pioneers of that classic cinema, isn't it? The that very much him playing by the rules, doing everything right. He a lot. I mean, at the time, that craft was still on the up and up and up, and there was still a lot of room for innovation and honing it. And he really honed it, and did really, really good things with it. Well, I watched a video on the of the, when he's talking to. I've forgotten the character's name, but they're at the shipyard, and he basically makes the proposal to Scotty, to the original sort of, this is what's going on, my wife's possessed, and will you follow her and everything like that. And I watched a video about how the blocking that's going on, and basically where the camera has to be in order to, where all the different positions the camera takes just in that one conversation.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
Yeah, his directing is his blocking is insane. It's very deliberate.
Yeah, you're going in, you're going out. All the characters are, and it's all just to mirror the emotional response of how the character is interpreting. I mean, it's extremely fabricated. It's not trying to create any sense of realism at all. It's almost going in the completely the opposite direction. It's totally manipulated, and it's always trying to manipulate the audience with these visual cues all the time. There's never any there's an element of ambiguity and abstraction because in the way that everything is, but he's always trying to suggest something by the way that maybe somebody sat or somebody's, it's all very deliberate, isn't it? With Hitchcock, it's all very deliberate, and that's why he was good.
Yep, he certainly was bloody good. So I think now's the time to move on to our second film, don't you think?
Yeah.
Which is Takashi Miike's 1999 film, Audition. Here's a clip.
あさってのヒロイン、あなたは今どこにいるのかしら。信じられないことって起こるものなのよ。あなたが少しだけ勇気を出せば。どんなスターにもデビューする前の時間がある。ヘップバーンもジュリア・ロバーツも、その時はヒロインになる前の自分を生きていたんです。そう、あさってのヒロインたちはあなたと同じ時間を生きています。
And we're back. So, I love doing that. Isn't that great? Okay. And we're back. So, you actually pointed out the similarities between Audition and Vertigo. I'm guessing because you had seen Audition quite recently, maybe a few weeks before you watched Vertigo.
That's right, yeah.
So did it sort of jump out at you as you were watching it that there was some overlap here, and maybe it'd be interesting to dig into that somewhat?
Yeah, I think it must have something to do with the fact that I just watched it not so long before. So yeah, there's all sorts to compare there, I feel. Differences and similarities, but you do kind of feel that the stories are more or less about the same thing. I can't help but feel.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's...
I actually, watching it, I watched it yesterday. This is the third time I'd seen Audition, and actually the last time I saw it was maybe a couple months ago. So I'm very fresh on it. And I mean, in terms of a story to explore how one can get caught up with one's fantasies of who we think people are and who we want people to be, having it be guy's wife dies 5-6 years later, the son tells him, oh, you should remarry, and he conducts an audition to find a new girl, and it's tighter. What it doesn't have is that, how I was talking about how in Vertigo there's a little bit of like the mechanism of the plot sort of creaks a little bit for me. With Audition, it's just rock solid, absolutely tight for me.
Yeah. I think...
like every single line of dialogue, every single scene is pointing in this one direction.
Yeah. Tonally, it's spot on as well. Yeah, so I really, really did admire the just the position of the camera just to imply things. So I thought one of the most interesting ones was when him and his son were eating at the table, and there's this very remote camera angle they've chosen. Like, it's almost like somebody sat in the other room watching them eat, and it you just felt, even though they were together, there was this sense of loneliness there.
Distance.
Yeah. which is really good. And when they were
really
another
good.
one that was funny as well was when they were driving. There was a car shot, and it was like the car was filmed, like the camera was like in a tree or something, like really high above, as if they were being stalked by some sort of bird of prey as well, which I thought was another interesting one, because it must have, I mean, it's taken quite a lot of effort just to kind of be like, well, I want to just I want to shoot it from up there. So it was very deliberate.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot. It's such an impressive film on all sorts of levels.
Yeah.
Obviously, tonally very different to Vertigo. Much darker.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in terms of the actual story, and the arc's pretty similar. The arc's very similar. And you have this the core underlying themes overlap a lot, and there's even scenes I find that are just almost the same. So okay,
Do you want to hit me with a breakdown of
I'll tell
scenes?
you. Yeah, so
Go on.
So okay, so in Vertigo, he's sorry, forgive me if the characters' names are getting muddled up, but yeah, so so it's Madeline. So you know, she's by the San Francisco Bridge, Golden Gate Bridge. She throws herself in the water, and he takes her back to her house, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
and they have that kind of scene there, and all of a sudden, she's gone. She's sort of disappeared, hasn't she?
Oh yeah.
And there's this and actually, it's not too dissimilar to a scene from before in the film where he follows her to this house and she just disappears as well.
Disappeared again.
Which I think is one of the most interesting scenes in that film, actually, because it's really starting to just kind of be like, well, that's not that's not possible. So, and it's really kind of just having fun with that sense of distorted reality that's sort of going on in that kind of the dreamy film. It's not but if you think about it, in Audition there is that scene where they go to like this holiday retreat by the sea, and they have that kind of like sexual exchange. He wakes
coitus.
Well, it doesn't.
I watched The Big Lebowski recently,
Right.
so I just remember Maud Lebowski going, "Coitus, the act of sex, Mr. Lebowski."
So yeah, his you don't actually see it on the screen, but yeah, he wakes up and she's left again. So there's exact like for like sort of thing.
A little point there. I don't know if you noticed the moment she leaves. He gets a phone call from reception. They're like, are you still staying given your partner has left? And he's like, my partner's left? And then it cuts to interior of the office, and suddenly, for the first time in the film, we're handheld. And a lot from that point on is handheld shots, like frenetically panning and chasing him down alleyway. So it's very deliberate. The moment she disappears, we go handheld.
Yeah.
It's like the next shot is handheld, and
that's brilliant.
It's so nice noticing shit like that where he knows exactly what he's doing to you. And actually, I'm gonna go straight to it, even though it's kind of towards the end. The cojones of doing him waking up in the bed and going, "Oh my god, I do have my foot. Oh my god, it was all a dream." And she's accepted my marriage proposal now, and now I'm freaking out because of this dream I've had. Have I made a horrible mistake? And then just hearing kitty, 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 and just open your eyes, you're back, and your son's about to get maced.
Yeah.
Like, that is straight up, he is fucking with you there. He's like laughing at you there by doing that. It's so, just the way he holds his foot in relief. I don't know about you, I feel that every time. When he holds, he's like, oh my god, my foot, I still have my little foot. And, oh man, it's so sadistic to just give you that and then take that away. The structure of the film, the moment she's not in the bed and he starts freaking out about where she is, the film it just ramps up, and the filmmaking starts getting amazing. We're blurring the lines so much more. She's going from being a little girl into being older, into being, it's that whole sequence is the shit. That is the shit. That is kind of puts like if you watch Jimmy Stewart's dream back to back with the guy in Audition's dream, you know, Jimmy Stewart's little quite quaint, like, oh, you're falling down a tunnel and you see her, and she kind of hide. Whereas it's like his dreams are fucked.
Oh yeah, I know. It's just, I
his
really
dreams are crazy.
Yeah. Well, I watched it again, and I think I felt it more the second time than I did the first time, actually, because I think, because I think, you know, when that shock factor's taken away when you watch it the second time, and you feel it a bit more, because you're not just sort of shocked and sort of repelled by what you're
actually focusing, you're actually processing what's happening because you're ready. Yeah.
I think that was I think that's probably what happened, and I just felt it more and more. It's a great rewatch actually, because you would think, even though the anticipation of the build up and everything would, you know, but it is a great rewatch, because you know,
there's tiny little things like when he goes, we should conduct an audition, and the guys you know, going like mixing the martini shaker. And, you know, it's a very purposeful, like, little section there where he's, like, shaking that shaker. And then that comes back later in his dream. Or there's all sorts of little setups. Like, the way he drinks the whiskey, they make sure to set up the whiskey, you know, a few times. So, you know, he's got this big jar of whiskey that he drinks out of. And it's almost a joy watching that first half again, knowing where it's, knowing that there's a guy in that bag. Knowing everything and watching him still just not listen to his best mate, not take any of the advice, not notice any of the signs, and just fucking go, just fall for her. And one thing I really absolutely love, I think it might be one of my favorite things about this film is, I mean, look, the editing is so rock solid and perfect and imaginative and ballsy. So like I said, you know, the right on the dime going to handheld, just cutting from that moment into a fast-paced handheld shot just to get the pace going.
Well,
but
it just changes the emotional tone, doesn't it? From the steady cam is kind of steady emotional. You know, and obviously when you flip,
he feels like he's got a handle on it, and then suddenly he doesn't.
And it's
but more so than that, when you see the moment he drinks the poison, so he's poured himself a whiskey at home and he drinks it, and his fingers start spasming, and like he starts you know, cramping in his neck, and he stands up and he passes out. The moment he falls, the first thing we see is their date. A montage of their dates.
Yeah, but it's night instead of day, and it all happens very differently. And it's really interesting.
It happens differently, and she is now saying about how her parents divorced and about how her uncle used to abuse her, and she's telling him all the things that he just completely ignored.
Yeah.
And so in that first half where you're seeing those scenes, you don't even see that dialogue because he didn't even listen to it. It didn't even register with him. And then as the second he passes out, Takashi cuts to those scenes. And it's like this, you know, and it makes it extremely clear that there were plenty more warning signs that he just purposefully ignored. And that's such a great choice to do it right then. He just keeps turning the knife, like every little edit he does is turning the knife.
Yeah.
Like doing the dream of him still having the foot, turning the knife. It's just brutal.
Yeah. I to be honest, I mean, I can see why you've interpreted it that way, but I wasn't as sure as to just be that's definitely, you know, the true version of events that is now sort of being reinserted into the film. And almost being looked at retrospectively.
That's true. That is just my reading.
No, but it's a perfectly valid reading. But I think it's presented in such a way that that is I mean, that is probably the most logical reading of it. But it just all gets really strange around that point where you don't know you don't really know what's real and what isn't at that point, don't you? And I take your point though, definitely. And
I just think that whole sequence on is really where the the jaw, like that sequence is a good, I would say, to like 15 minutes of him just like kind of losing it, him dreaming. And what I really adore about it is there is very little, well, next to no optical tricks. He's shooting it, he's just panning with the action, and suddenly someone else is there. It's not really obscured lighting. There isn't like lots of smoke. There isn't like weird optical kind of like a bulging of the, dream-like fades or anything. He's just showing you shit that is so fucked up. And like, the women, as they're trying to blow him, like slowly change, and it turns into the woman from work that he's been ignoring, and then it turns into his son's girlfriend, which for me, really, when I first saw that really, I was like, oh my, the balls on Takashi to do that, because that is, I mean, and especially in Japan,
well, it's dark.
Like that whole schoolgirl thing.
It's very dark, and then the guy comes out of the sack, and she vomits into a dish, and he starts like eating it up like a.
Thanking her.
I mean,
for
that whole
Yummy.
part is just of the film is yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're in agony by that point. You're just like, you're just reeling after blow after blow, aren't you?
Yeah, but you're glued to the screen. You cannot
it's gripping.
you and the film are one at that point.
Yeah.
Like there's no separate, and that like, I really that sequence still holds weight.
Yeah,
every time.
Well, yeah, I think I think it's interesting what you're saying, and something that didn't occur to me, which you've quite rightly pointed out, is another comparison with Vertigo, where he goes into that kind of dream, Scotty in Vertigo, but there's also a parallel dream sequence, which obviously, like Audition, takes it much darker. But
ramps it way up.
But I guess what is more horrifying and terrifying to people than their fantasies or their sense of reality, like the carpet being pulled out from under their feet in such a brutal way. And I think that's why these films are kind of what they are. They're so gripping, and people identify with that feeling, and it's a real concern for people. But that kind of wall between reality and delusion and fantasy, and both films walk that tightrope very well and tell that story very well. You have to say more comparisons again, because I think it's just sort of helpful to get these out the way for now. But I also was striking that, so when he's suffering from vertigo, so when he's going up the stairs and he can't stop it from, he's sort of almost like in a paralyzed state. Sort of similar to how like you said, when he takes the poison, he's in a paralyzed state
he's
where
just
he's basically helpless,
watching,
can't do anything about it. So that's kind of like, I guess, I mean, it's all quite you could look at it all very metaphorically and be like, well, that's just like the terror and the helplessness of when you're exposed. Those scenes which we were talking about earlier, when he brings Kim Novak back, after she jumps in the river, and when they're at the hotel in an Audition, I always kind of feel, I'm always looking at it at a very metaphorical level, and it's like, this is almost the part where the character is really embraced the fantasy at this point. So he's like, he's opened the door and sort of let it in, and it's actually sort of manifested. And I think that whole thing of that personal or intimate space is that manifestation of sort of that inner room of your consciousness, if you like, and how something can just disappear, how something can just be there and then all just kind of like vanish all of a sudden. And that's kind of what's interesting in Audition, is how he he chooses to take you back there very briefly, doesn't he?
Yeah,
like you pointed out, where you go back and it was like you said, he touches his feet, it's all a dream. He puts water on his face and was like, "Oh, what is that?" So what do you think that means? To be honest, because I mean, it's courageous as a storytelling thing, because it's like he's proper pulling your leg, like, "Oh, it was all a dream," that cliche, and then reverses it again. So from that point of view, yeah, it is quite brave. And you are just like, you are kind of pulling the audience's leg a bit at that point. But I feel, I do kind of feel like there is more to it than that. So why do you think he kind of like brings you back there momentarily?
I think there is a point to be made, because that moment is really kind of key. You know, it was such a genius moment to jump back to, because within the logic of the film, if he just wakes up then and she's actually next to him, nothing's happened yet. Nothing has happened yet. Every fucked up thing happened. Every crazy sort of like development happened after she disappeared from the hotel. So taking you back to that exact moment works from a story point of view. But what's kind of leaning me towards agreeing with you in that there may be more to it is that it's very specifically lit and shot. I mean, it's this blue, bathing in blue, dreamlike blue sequence, and it's actually it's one of the few. It's a scene where it's pretty much you're just in that room. There is one shot of her on the balcony looking out to the ocean, but you're pretty much in that room. I mean, you get one shot of the receptionist calling him and saying, now that your partner's left, are you staying? And then it's like a really tacky. It looks like a completely different location to me. Yeah. That shot of the receptionist. Yeah. Now I don't know if that's intentional, but
I think it must be.
It must be, right?
I mean,
and the thing is that when they flip over on the bed, it's a very interesting kind of graphical match where it doesn't actually cut. So she kind of flips him over in quite a violent way, and then the camera follows the blanket upwards, and you think that she's maybe giving him head or something, but then she's just not there. You know, I don't know if that kind of confused.
That actually made me jump. Watching it last time. Yeah, it flips over. Nobody's there. Yeah. That's a good cut. Good, nice little.
So there's a very
tight little editing cut. That actually
exactly. Yeah. So it's very specific weird shit going on there, like where it's. So all those scenes are within this kind of blue, hazy, and that's the first time that they supposedly have sex. So, yeah, cutting back to that right at the end when his son is about to be maced. I don't know. Do you have any ideas? I mean, other than it being just a fun sort of trick?
I think it's just like maybe just trying to double or underline that represented the fantasy world, and he tries to go back there one last time just to escape the horrifying reality. Last gasp denial or something, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I could see that. It's like when Jimmy returns to the stables just for one quick second while they're kissing.
Yeah.
In the room.
Yeah. There we go.
You like that?
There we go.
You like that?
Yeah. Subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's exactly it. See?
Yeah, it's trying to return to the fantasy. Yeah. Even once you know it's all done.
Exactly. There we go.
One thing that stood out to me this watch, which I don't know. I don't think it's it stood out. It was the sort of sun-kissed hospital room that the movie opens with, where his wife is dying and dies, and it's this like really purposefully lit, either sunrise or sunset, beautiful little set of this hospital room, and he and his son walks in, and he's got the little gift for her. That already starts it off on quite a dreamy footing.
Yeah.
And it's a really nice way to open. And then it's just, I think he's really, because that feels like, okay, let's just pretend you saw that. You turn on the TV and you see that scene with the son walks in with the little papier-mâché thing he made, and he turns around and it's this like, there's like soft synth on the score, and there's sun-kissed light, and then just hard cut to Kiri Kiri soaring off the leg. I mean, in no world do you think that's the same piece of programming. You don't think that's from the same movie. The first bit, he's setting you up so well with it being kind of like a sort of family thing, like weird, sort of tonally. It's like, and I think he's making a specific point as to the main character who's auditioning these women doesn't see anything wrong with what he's doing. He doesn't see it as a bit fucking weird and just a bit sort of scummy, a bit creepy, actually, to be honest. And the fact that he's sort of obsessing over this 24-year-old girl who's closer in age to his son than he is, and but it's all presented very like, whatever kind of thing. And then there's that moment, like, the hotel room, the blue hotel room moment is where it really everything changes and the tone goes completely different. That we start getting handheld and it gets really, really screwed up really quickly. Yeah. But that first half is he's really manipulating you with the even the shot where the title comes up. It's like a long lens, maybe a 200 shot from down the road of him and his son walking up the street, like very I don't know, I want to say like TV movie almost. And it comes up on the side, Audition, from one of the polls as they hold hands. Yeah. And that could easily be like some crappy Japanese family movie, about a son and a father. Yeah, but no, a woman has chainsaw wire in this and saws off a dude's goddamn head.
Yeah, well, that's it.
While he's playing the piano.
Yeah, I think that was tonally very, very good. It's set up for you, the tone, like the tone and how the tone changes so radically is almost kind of, as a storytelling device, is almost kind of like how the fantasy was sort of smashed to pieces as well.
Yeah,
it does remind me a bit of Haneke, his first film. Is it there's this, I forgot which, it's called The Seventh Continent or The Ninth Continent or something like that.
Oh, Seventh Continent, yeah.
Yeah, Seventh Continent, yeah. And it's about the family who are basically like living in a TV commercial. And like when somebody wants, like, can you pass me like the orange juice? It's like literally like filmed like in that way, and it all has that has that tone to it, and that's like, and it just makes that what happens later in the film where they all just like decide to like smash everything up in the house and kill themselves. It just makes it even more violent because not only because the tone was never like that, the tone has changed. And I think you're kind of like talking about something quite similar there, what happens in this film as well. And it is, it's masterful stuff. No doubt about it.
Yeah, because also I think you're weeding out a lot of, like, it's like it's a real slow burn. And the little subtle hints he gives you aren't enough on a first viewing to kind of like, to give you any idea of how screwed up it's going to get.
Yeah.
You have no clue where it's going.
Yeah.
One little side note, I love it when his mate asks if, when he's auditioning the women, when his friend asks if she's seen any Tarkovsky films.
Yeah.
I thought that was that's lovely. Little Tarkovsky reference.
Yeah.
Really nice.
But actually what you're saying is interesting as well, because Vertigo, going back to Vertigo, has a pretty consistent tone throughout. It's got a very Hollywood celluloid feel about it all the way through, and doesn't change, even though the things are happening within the film are changing. It always still feels sort of consistent as well, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So, Hitchcock would never use a steady. He would never use a handheld, would he? I mean, I might be wrong about that, but it's just maybe it's an assumption I've made. But yeah, the switching to handheld, was yeah. I mean, I didn't know that, and so like I'm glad you pointed that out because that is just brilliant.
Yeah, it's really cool that.
Yeah, but yeah, the tone, yeah, tonally, yeah, how that sort of switches.
It's a
there.
real shift. It's a harsh
Yeah.
shift and I think it's a really ballsy thing to do because you know, this is your film, so you don't want to kind of put people off. There's a film called One Cut of the Dead. I don't know if you've seen that. I highly recommend it with all of my heart. But the problem with One Cut of the Dead is the first 40 minutes is extremely bewildering because you're watching it going, what the fuck? Okay, this is kind of fun, but why have all my friends told me I must see this? And then something happens 40 minutes in, and it recontextualizes everything you've seen, and it's suddenly an absolute joy. Every second is pure joy. But it's very hard. It's very hard to like go, listen, I'm going to do that, and I might lose a lot of people in the first 40 minutes. But I'm doing it because the movie needs it. And I just really respect that going, no, we're doing the daytime TV tone for half the movie. That's what's happening. And then when we get out of it, it's going to be like all the more powerful.
Yeah.
It's really, I respect it. I really respect it.
Yeah.
Just while we're on the first half, the audition sequence, I know it's played comedically, but one thing I felt about this film, which for 1999, it's crazily ahead of its time. But it did give me a casting couch, Weinsteinian, #MeToo vibe to it. That whole, you know, powerful movie producers going, oh, you just put on an audition, you get all these hot women in, and you judge them, and it's like that. That felt actually very relevant and prescient in our current time now.
Absolutely.
Given all the stuff that's come out with producers. And so it's interesting, this 99, Takashi's, making that comparison. Did that sort of stick out to you?
Yeah, and to go even wider than that, I think the whole thing about, like, the lens that we live our lives through today is very much, Audition, a lot of the not just how we meet people and partners in that way, but across the board. But we'll just focus on that for this sake, just to narrow it down. But even just things like, you know, Tinder and all things like that. It's kind of this is sort of feels like a bit of an audition process going on there in terms of just how people are presenting themselves and the ideas that people, you know, could get that were just, you know, actually very far removed from reality. I don't know. Yeah. So there's also that maybe layer on top as well, which is you're kind of expanding and going out even further there. But I kind of feel like it all sort of fits into my head in all kind of a similar way.
Yeah. I just, it struck me as quite, just pretty surprising that a film from 99 would do that. And I'm not even sure I'm not sure how much of that was actually intentional, that this kind of, obviously, I don't know. I mean, us as an audience, we're not supposed to think that audition process is fine. I don't think. But it is played comedically. So that's why I am somewhat. I mean, obviously, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it's the characters have normalized it through their attitude. You follow the characters, and they're like, yeah, let's do it. Actually, you know, because I can't help being reminded of Vertigo again, but you know, similar thing goes on in Vertigo where, just because of what's going on with the character you're following so closely. For some reason, when he does sort of slip into being reprehensible, it's not made as obvious, or it doesn't feel as obvious as it could be made, and that's interesting how the film does that, or both films sort of do that in a way. The more obsessed they get, the more reprehensible they become as well. Both characters.
Well, true, but from the beginning, our main character is it gives us hints. Like I say, it's like because I think what's confusing us is how it's done. How that tonally it's like everything's fine here, guys. Don't worry. It's all good. The music's saying, "Oh, it's all good, fine." Yeah, he's auditioning women. It's fun, but. I think maybe it's up to us to decide how we feel about that.
He is saying in the film though, like I feel like a criminal, and things like that.
Yeah,
his character
true.
is, but he's still kind of going along with it, and he's still really enjoying it at the same time.
Absolutely,
you don't quite buy it, even though he's saying it.
Yeah,
even though he's sort of showing, trying to like, and the other guy is just sort of like doesn't even care at all. I mean, he's just so detached, isn't he?
The other guy doesn't. Yeah,
I mean, it's just like his life. It's his normal life. He's quite detached, and he's he just doesn't. He doesn't really see what's wrong with it at all, does he?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, our main character wants. I mean, when he's talking to his best mate at the bar, he's like, I want obedient. I want an obedient woman. And he says it very. It's like obedient, trained, talented, but not, not like these. And then the other guy says like, not like those stuck up, horrible trash women over there. And it's like, why are they? Well, they're just laughing at a bar. Why are they trash women?
Well, yeah. And he talking like you were a commodity, as if you would go and like purchase something, and you want this like specification attached to it all. Yeah. There's a lot of hints going all along the way, and that's all. Their attitude is probably what is ultimately going to be their downfall in the first place, and I think that's kind of there right from the beginning, and it's sort of dotted all the way through the film.
Yeah, I agree.
But
it's subtle. It's not hitting you over the head with it at all.
Yeah.
Because again, I think the tone is helping, making you kind of like swallow it nice and easily. Which is also a nice, interesting comment, I think, on tone and how the way you present something it makes it palatable or not, and you can swallow some pretty interesting shit given how it's presented. But then also another thing that stuck out to me again in the audition process is he is so into her because she injured her hip, and so there's this vulnerability aspect which again plays into the Vertigo thing of like there's this brokenness to her, and he has this it's like, he goes, I have such respect for you, understand the pain of life, and you're so mature for someone that young to have understand pain. And it's quite clear that a big reason why he's attracted to this woman is because she had this dream that was ripped from her, and he somehow is relating that to the death of his wife.
Yeah, I get. Yeah,
in quite a strange way, he's sort of forcing that into being somehow related to the death of his wife. When I mean, I don't see much relation other than your plans don't always work out. But that's not. I mean, fucking up your hip so you can't do ballet and losing your wife when you're in your 50s. Very different thing.
Well, yeah, I think, but that's that. I mean, I think now we're talking about it a bit more. I'm starting to put a few things together, like as so often happens when you do just have a nice conversation about it. But it's everything is through the lens of his own loneliness, isn't he? That's sort of the justification for everything. And the film, the film does that very well, even from the beginning. Like I've said, those camera shots. Everything done through the storytelling is pointing through that. So, and you almost get the feeling like this when this character's been alone for too long, and he's almost kind of it's that feeling of loneliness that is driving him on, and almost sort of allowing, like he's because of this loneliness, he's allowing himself to do these things, and that's might be what he's relating to there as well. Just that, good old fashioned sense of loneliness. Whereas,
I'll take a side of loneliness.
You're lonely.
I'm
lonely. Like you're like terribly lonely. I've been terribly lonely too, sort of thing. But obviously, he's trying to project his loneliness onto her. Whereas her loneliness, obviously,
other
like
plans.
as we find out in the film, is far greater. You know, I mean, he's lived like this, like bourgeois existence. I mean, he's like, you know, he's you know, his sense of pain, in like proportionally, he just doesn't understand, like the level of pain that she's referring to, but he's identifying the two as if they are the same. And that's
yeah, there you go. That's
that
it.
is,
Yeah,
that is
what an insult.
well, it's just kind of it's. I mean, that's the power of what film can do, really, and the stories that it can tell. I mean, I'm sure that happens in life quite a lot, and and the fact that the film can just sort of pick apart and sort of draw these lines, is kind of great in itself. Yeah, but he eventually and that kind of dream sequence is different to Vertigo, because he's seeing her nightmare as well. He's being a part of her nightmare.
Yeah.
So
good point.
so he has access to all of that. All of a sudden, it's like he sees everything, doesn't he? He sees the big picture, whereas that doesn't. The same thing doesn't really occur in Vertigo.
Not at all. Yeah. One thing that I really liked that is a somewhat of a segue, but I don't think so, is the ad they put out on the radio to recruit the women, saying you know,
Stars,
who are the two women?
Stars weren't born.
Weren't born. Yeah, tomorrow's heroine could be you. But who is it? Julia Roberts.
Yeah.
And who else? Someone else. But anyway,
Probably
it's like
I think it was was it Marilyn Monroe or Julia Roberts? I don't know.
Oh no, it was Audrey Hepburn.
Oh, Audrey Hepburn. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Audrey Hepburn and Julia Roberts. Like they had normal lives too, and you could have. You know, you could just be, you know, tomorrow's star. You could be a heroine. That I really liked. That. It kind of. I thought that was really good. It sort of made me think about a lot of. I don't know, that Dylan line, advertising signs they con you into thinking you can be the one that can do what's never been done. You know, I thought that advertisement to recruit the women was pitch perfectly written, you know, to sort of play into and to exploit the kind of desires that people may have, you know, of being a hero or a heroine, being a star. You know? I thought it was really perfectly done.
Yeah, there's not loads of nice little touches. I mean, I think that's what makes great films, isn't it? You know, it's like I think, as you pointed out early on, the attention to detail, all to serve the plot, all to serve the bigger, the larger narrative. And it's all there. Like even the guy, I don't know, I still can't explain what's so relevant about the cocktail guy shaking the thing.
I love it.
Appears,
I know, but it's perfect,
works.
isn't it?
I don't know why it works though. It just
perfect.
It just fits. It's like
this, it just fucking works.
It was like it was always there the whole time.
Yeah,
sort of that rhythm, that kind of shaking. It was there the whole time, and you never saw it. Kind of things like but you can't. Very abstract.
Yeah, it's hard to put words on why that works. Yeah, because it's such a when it's so powerful. When it just cuts to the you're like, yeah, I noticed that guy doing that, and that was weird. But we didn't do anything. We just kept on going, which is almost like a mirror of what he's doing. It's like, yeah, I may have noticed a few things, but I just kind of, it was weird, but whatever. Like, we just keep going, you know.
I wonder if they sorted that out in the editing room, or they knew before going in. Maybe
that's an interesting point, bro. Maybe they were watching the rushers and they were like, God, this fucking waiter extra really made a fucking song and dance about the martini. You know? And he's like, look how fucking distracting that is. Takeshi's going, we can't have that, mate. But the line is being said, we can't cut that early. So he was like, you know what, get the bastard back in. We'll shoot a close-up. We'll shoot an insert for the dream later on. I don't know. See, I mean, that's might be a bit far-fetched, but it's possible that it happened that way around.
I don't know either. But
You never know.
But yeah, no, it's
it's a banger, isn't it? Like it really, it's just great.
It is. I mean, it's a really powerful film. And tells that story of that kind of obsessed with a fantasy, and then it all comes sort of crashing down to earth, but tells the same story but in a much more dark, brutal way. And can't fault it, really. I mean,
no, I really can't. It's pretty much pitch perfect. Everything is set up so well. Little tiny things like she is so good at what she's doing. Like the persona that she puts on is so subservient and so obedient and so shy and like pathetic, frankly, and like she knows that's what he wants.
Oh gosh, man.
And she plays it so well.
That scene where the phone rings and that smile appears.
Yeah.
Oh god,
yeah.
That got me this time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
she's like, I got him.
It cleverly kind of goes to that scene before, and he's thinking about calling her, and then it shows the shot of that room, and you're like,
wait,
oh
what?
My god.
What? Oh my god, no.
And he doesn't call her, and eventually the phone rings, so it's built it up. And then that smile appears, and it's like, oh my goodness. I mean, yeah, you're like, I don't know. That's
It's good filmmaking, is what it is.
It is. It's very good filmmaking.
Yeah.
Everything's there. Everything's.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm sure. I mean, obviously, Vertigo, Hitchcock was a big film. Still is a big film. I mean, it's in that kind of canon of sort of must-watch films, isn't it? It's like
definitely. Yeah.
So I wonder how much Audition. I mean, we're seeing obviously comparisons, but I wonder, like, actually how much it was inspired by Vertigo.
I would say almost not at all. I would say I wouldn't be surprised if it was all of these things are coincidences, but and not. I mean, they're not coincidences. It's just these films are dealing with very similar things, and tonally it's completely different, but like thematically, it's pretty similar. But I don't know.
Do you not think there's a bit of a slight clue to in that, as you pointed out in that radio commercial, where he mentions people like Audrey Hepburn, Julia Roberts, this kind of like American cultural icons. I mean, and he's even dropping Tarkovsky's name in there as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know what, buddy? Maybe.
Do you not think? I mean, of course, Hitchcock will have been watched at least.
No, I'm sure he would have seen. I'm just saying, I don't think Miike will have consciously been inspired by, like, I don't think he's going, okay, this is like my Vertigo. I don't know. I haven't read anything he said about this film. I mean, to be honest with you, how many Takashi Miike films have you seen? Is this your only one?
I'm pretty sure, unless that I'm aware of. I mean, what do you know? What are the other titles that he's done?
Have you seen 13 Assassins?
No.
Yeah, have you? So I've seen 13 Assassins, Itchy the Killer, Audition.
Okay,
and,
I've seen Itchy the Killer.
Oh, you've seen Itchy the Killer,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So Itchy the Killer is his second most popular film.
Well,
I have to say,
definitely where the Heath Ledger Joker thing came from.
With the face. Yeah,
it has to be.
I mean, yeah, you're right. You're right with the cut lips.
Yeah, with the smile. The kind of the smile that's kind of being extended through being the cheeks being sliced. Yeah,
cut. Yeah.
In this one, kick what's known as J horror off.
J horror. I don't know if it did. I think I don't know. I mean, obviously Ringu and stuff. He made one missed call, Takashi, which is that's pure J horror. It's like about people who die when they get phone calls, and it's all got those beautiful early 2000s Japanese flip phones, those silver flip phones with like glitter, and when one of those rings, like you die. To be honest with you, One Missed Call, really not my kind of film. It was fine. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. But Audition is like, stays with you forever. So yeah, this is my favorite film of his that I've seen.
Yeah,
I'm going to be watching Visitor Q, which apparently.
But do you not think it's tapping into something very like intrinsically terrifying to all people, and that's that kind of the fantasy disintegrating, and
yeah, I do,
and that's universal, isn't it?
Well, it's very weird because his other films are very different to Audition. That's all I'm going to say. They feel very different. They don't feel like they're made by the same guy, to be honest. Not that I don't like them, but Audition has this real, like, for me, it's just pitch perfect. The tone and everything, the way it moves, it's great. I wasn't huge on Ichi the Killer, to be honest.
No, I remember watching it, and yeah, because it's super violent as well, isn't it? So it's like I remember being sort of taken aback by the violence, but not really remembering anything more of it to it than that.
Yeah,
there's a really bad scene with the acid getting poured on somebody. I remember in it, and it was like, ooh, it was like really graphic and brutal, and I think that's like the most memorable thing from it.
Yeah, the plot was just like incomprehensible, like Yakuza, like gangsters fighting and stuff. It didn't grab me at all. For me, because Audition is top 30, maybe even top 20 for me films. It's so good.
Yeah, and I thought it was better the second time as well, which you wouldn't have thought, really, would you? Because of all the big reveals that happen in it.
Yeah, given the twist. Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't have thought, because some films do lose their power once those reveals. You go in over the second time, and you know what's coming, whereas. Not at all. Not the case at all with Audition. I think it kind of just packed even more of a punch, because you still have that anticipation of knowing what's coming, and that's just as powerful as not knowing.
Do you think Vertigo suffered a little bit on rewatch?
Yeah, I remember, because I haven't seen it. I only watched Audition twice, all quite recently. Vertigo is a film I've been familiar with for much longer.
Many years.
So I think I watched it first when I was sort of a teenager or something. Always really liked it. But I think this last time where we watched it quite recently, I did enjoy it. Not saying I didn't enjoy it, and I appreciated it. I did really like it, but it felt like well-trodden ground, and it was, I wasn't
blown away or anything.
Well, I struggled to get. I did like it, and I did get new things out of it, but not as much as I was hoping for.
Right.
But still, obviously, it's a classic and really, really, really good to watch.
One thing I just want to bring up that we didn't mention about The Dream. There's a very short, I would say maybe 3-4 second shot, which I think warrants a little bit of discussion. During The Dream, our main character there's a tiny little 4-second shot of him sat in the audition chair. Not in the desk, but in the chair that the women were sitting in. And he's looking into camera and he says, like, I can't remember exactly what he says.
I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah, it's almost like from the angle that he's being auditioned himself.
Yeah, exactly.
He's in the audition chair and he's talking as if he's in an audition, and he's saying like la 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 la. I've always wanted this because like after my wife passed away or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I know what you're referring to.
What's going on there?
Interesting,
that
isn't
really
it? Yeah.
boggled my mind. I was like, whoa, that's interesting.
Yeah,
in his dream, he's auditioning. And that's when it's cutting between all sorts of different stuff, like his house there's a tiny section where his housemaid is like sort of like embracing the bag guy on the staircase, on his staircase in his house.
Well,
I don't know if you remember
he's
that.
gone into that world where everything is just like fragmented reality, where he's kind of like everything's all just blending together, and it's a really good. I mean, they had so much. They got all the juice out of that part as they possibly could get, couldn't they? Like radically like here's just like an opportunity just to kind of like radically like bounce around from one perspective to another, and like really sort of like muddy the water, and gosh. Yeah,
just quickly, what he says is, my son said I looked
worn
dispirited.
out. Something.
Yeah, and that I needed to get a new woman, so I decided, and then it cuts. So he
doesn't mention his wife actually. So, but
yeah. But it's I loved that little detail.
Yeah.
Just quickly, him in the chair.
I did notice that myself this time. Yeah, you're right. It is a really nice little moment there because you're aware. It's all about camera positioning, really, isn't it? I mean, if that wouldn't be obvious if it wasn't for the camera angle. Pointed.
Yeah, if he didn't set up that angle, so
just from the point of view of from the audition table, straight.
Exactly.
You wouldn't. That wouldn't really be very clear, would it? So camera placement is such a big thing in this film, and it's done masterfully.
Yeah, the way you see the gross ballet teacher uncle burn her as a child and then burn her as an adult, and it's the exact same angle. He does the exact same face and moves the leg in the same way. The way the martini shaker man is like in the piano room suddenly, and then his housemaid is like banging the tongueless guy, and she chops off his head, and you can hear him still playing a couple notes of the piano while she's chopping off his head, and he says, "You're wonderful," while she's slicing off his goddamn neck.
when it cuts to the tongue flapping on the floor as well.
Oh, yeah. That's good. That's good. That's a moment. I'd say that's the first real, obviously, no questions asked. He hallucinated that. He saw that because he's in the stairs. The guy says, "Oh yeah, they found a tongue and a few extra fingers," and he fucking sees them on the floor straight away.
Yeah, and the similar things happening. Like if we're going to compare it to Vertigo, and every time we talk something, it reminds me of Vertigo. So he's like seeing Kim Novak's character in all those old places again, isn't he? He's sort of like hallucinating as well. He's seeing other people, and he's seeing her, but it turns out they're other people. And things like that. What is going on there with the character? What process are they undergoing when they're like is it just like losing their grip on reality because they can't trust their own sense of reality anymore because they feel it slipping? Or is it just like, is it the obsession of wanting something to be so true that you almost convince yourself that you're like subconsciously trying to convince yourself it is because you can't accept that it isn't. I mean, what does that actual point? Because the story arc is happening at pretty much exactly the same point in the film for both characters. But he's just kind of imagining it at that point, isn't it? In his head, he's kind of thinking like, oh, that he's just kind of picturing it, and he's like horrified by the picture. So maybe it's not an hallucination, to be fair.
Yeah, well, I think there's just a degree of his mind escaping from him, losing control of his mind and what he sees and how he feels and stuff. One thing that I absolutely, again, this kind of plays in, this I would say is a hallucination and is probably my second favorite thing about the film. It's close, maybe it's tied. The fact that she starts speaking to him from across the floor after her neck's broken. And saying all the little made-up lines, and he's just saying to his son, "Go call the cops, son." But she's like, "I was so shy to see you again, and I'm so excited. I'm so happy you called me."
Oh yeah. What does that what's going on there? I mean,
Well, he's
by
just
that point,
he's just turning the
by that
knife.
point, I'm just like, I mean, I'm feeling
But
like I'm
he's-
reeling from the emotional shock of it all. So I'm not like, and I think like that does have a very emotionally significant part to play in terms of how the film's trying to make you feel at that point. But I can't quite put my finger on what is actually going on there. So
for me,
what are your ideas?
Well, I think that's that because he's crying while looking at it, and again, to reference back to him, the scenes where it changes. This is why I thought that when he sees the date scenes again with different dialogue, that's the real life, right? Because the lines that he is hearing her say when she's on the floor with her neck broken are the lines we saw in the first time around of the date.
Is she actually saying them though, or is he hallucinating?
Doesn't matter. It's the same thing. The important thing is what she is saying is the exact same lines that she was saying in the original date scene we saw, and then we see, in my opinion, the real series of events.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, when he's on the floor and her neck's broken, he's hearing her say those things and crying, realizing, I was just hearing what I wanted to hear. And if I can even hear her say it when I look at her fucking dead body. I can hear her saying it.
Okay, right. So she is, that is all that is all going on in his mind. She can't.
No, that's all going on in his mind. Yeah, no, she's not speaking.
She can't possibly be saying those things.
No. She never did. He just saw her saying them. And he saw what he wanted to see. It was like a Joan of Arc type deal, where he saw what he wanted. And at the end, that's him, in my opinion, him looking at her and she's saying them and he's crying while she's saying it, is him realizing. He's like, what? Oh my! I mean, it's just driving the point home even further.
Yeah,
like,
and then
I was completely delusional.
That's the end of the film, isn't it?
I was completely delusional. No, the end of the film is even better. It's even better, Dan. It's so good. You get the voiceover of him telling her, oh, life's difficult, that it ain't that life, it's hard.
One day
but,
you'll wake up and it'll be wonderful, or is that one of the lines?
Yeah,
or?
One day you'll wake up and it'll all be fine. And it's like, yeah, you prick, suck on that. Now you've lost a foot and you've almost lost your other foot. One day you'll wake up and it'll be fine, yeah? And then, just again,
try mate.
Final knife twist, cut to her as a young girl putting on her ballet shoes. Roll credits. Good night, I'm Takashi Miike. Thunderous Orson Wellesian applause. I mean, good lord, that ending is good, isn't it?
Yeah, it packs a punch, certainly does.
It's like a triple whammy of driving the point home of like, you delusional bastard.
But isn't that the kind of the scary reality though? Is like, is that how we experience reality, just through like these fantasies? And is that like all we've got to keep going? Is that all that sustains us? Like we just jump from one to the other, and kind of, gradually sort of let go of one and just sort of hop from one to the other. And when you're under, like, it's psychologically distressing when something abruptly ends, because you're in that sort of point of, you're in that kind of no man's land area where you're just, is that do you think that's almost what these films are sort of touching upon?
I think it's a pretty well used adage that we tell ourselves stories to survive, and we basically just because the universe is infinite, endless, and uncaring. And there is sort of no shape, and everything's seemingly random, and that is such an insurmountable thing for our little tiny brains to wrap our head around. So we have to funnel them into little stories that kind of make sense of our lives, and more often than not, those little stories are colored by the media we consume. I mean it's stories. I mean there's no shape to any of this.
That's constructions that are basically as real or unreal as, I mean, no one can actually clearly define how, I mean, they're as real or unreal as you want them to be, and nobody can actually clearly define what is and what isn't. So yeah, and maybe that's what's so distressing about the actual that proposition in the first place, because it actually just does blur the actual boundaries of what is real and what isn't real, and that's kind of like almost like the ground moving underneath you, sort of.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, they're powerful themes. They are, and that's why I
Totally.
think that's what makes the film so gripping.
Anything else, Bud, you want to talk about?
No, I think that's nice.
Yeah, same here. Cool. Well, let's wrap her up.
Yep, great chatting with you, and look forward to the next one.
Thanks for listening to Screen Dreams. We'll be back again next week with more themes, dreams, and extremes. Until then, take her easy. You've been listening to Screen Dreams, brought to you by Dragline Pictures, recorded in Studio B of the Abernathy Building. Special thanks to Samson's Diner.